One of the best ways that you can show empathy to somebody is accepting them for who they are, for the way that they see themselves.
Is kind of something to be understanding about. You can create toxic, frustrating feelings for yourself. I know I have friends that I identify as non-binary. They have less tolerance or no tolerance to it and will correct someone. And you know what? I don't see anything wrong with that either.
You're told that you only have two choices but there's other options for you to take. There's always nuance. There's always gray area. It's not just black and white. You don't just have to drink Coke or Pepsi. Hello, and welcome to the Radical Empaths podcast. I'm Josh.
And I'm Liz.
And on this show, we're exploring and analyzing our cultural norms.
And questioning our society's intricacies with thoughtful nuances.
We're inquiring about the legitimacy of conventional and orthodox ways of thinking, and observing the strange traditions that they create.
We'll be taking a mindful and sensitive approach to create some deeper meaning out of all of our discussions.
Hello and welcome to the Radical Empaths podcast, episode number 5. Here we are today talking about gender. So I just want to get right into the topic and kind of like we do in every episode, give a little overview of why we connect with this personally, what resonates personally, and why we feel like that this is a topic that's worthy of, the radical empath perspective, and kind of give an explanation of why that is. So to start it off, I want to just kind of like toss it over to my lovely co-host, Liz, because she has a very interesting perspective and experiences. And I think that, you'll have a good way of kind of kicking this off. So just let me open it up. Big question, like what about gender, what in your experiences has led you to the perspectives that you have about, gender? And it's a big question. Just go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I think, like you said, it's a big topic, and there's lots of personal and intimate details and stories that probably everybody has to share when it comes to these types of things. But I think where my journey with learning about gender and the difference between gender and sex, and what sex you're born with and how that's separate from gender, sparked from like an art history course that I took in college, called Image and Gender. And I think intuitively I took this class because I was curious about why there was even an entire course about that. I'm like, how does it all tie together to be a 3.5-month long conversation?
And didn't you also, in your time at UB, give some kind of a presentation about the gender spectrum?
Yeah, during the UB, which is the school I went to, during the semester, I was like trying to get together a presentation about the gender spectrum and go over some like important key points that I learned from it was like a mixture of what I had learned in my art history class and also like things that I had researched on my own time about it. So there was like a whole presentation that was put together about the historically where gender has come from in our culture and like other cultures as well. And then we also went over like all the LGBTQ plus initiatives and resources that the school has to offer, because a live presentation where you're amongst a lot of other people might not be the most comfortable place to express your feelings, even though our club was very inclusive and we had a very like welcoming atmosphere. It was still like we wanted to offer additional resources to people. And yeah, and it was a really cool thing because I think that a lot of people learned things that you can use in your professional life to make people feel more comfortable, especially like entering the professional world. If you're gonna have a job, you want to know how to make people feel comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted you to be able to share the unique experiences that you had in your time with your education and the kind of ways that led you to open up and thinking about gender.
I learned a lot about myself, and the people around me, very supportive class. So I think I was lucky in that way too, because you need to kind of have a safe space to feel like you can open up with those kinds of conversations.
Yeah. So what'd you learn about yourself?
So yeah, I should probably share. I identify as a gender nonconforming or gender fluid individual, and I prefer to use pronouns she, they. And I think that this is huge for me because I see a huge difference between the sex that you're born as and the gender that you identify as. They're two totally separate things, and it's just very liberating to know the difference and to be able to be there for others that, you know, may identify a different way than what, you know, society sees them as.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a good quick little overview about, Liz's experience, and it's been, a learning experience for me too, because to have a partner who kind of goes in that direction and a gender, fluid kind of way has been a real, eye-opening experience for me to just learn more about this topic. I mean, I identify as cis male, and would consider myself straight, so, and I'm not really hitting many of the minority points there. So I recognize that. I recognize the privilege that I would speak from that perspective. And that's why I like having I like to be humble when I talk about these things, and to just be curious and open to learn from people who have differing experiences. So no one better than your partner. And that's been my experience so far. So yeah, for me, like learning about this whole topic has, I mean, it's made me think about like my own personal experiences and the ways that I identify, because I wouldn't just consider myself like alpha macho man type of guy. And it's interesting why there are those classifications. So I want to talk more about that, but I
Yeah.
think I want to still talk a little bit more with you about um like what the experience has been like, because you prefer the pronouns she, they, and this is, just your, from what you've explained to me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you just your preference that you prefer not to be referred to in the context of using the word her. And it just doesn't feel right, and you don't resonate with it, and it doesn't feel like a word that kind of encapsulates your experience. And so you prefer to be to use the word they instead of that. And that's what I've, tried to do at home, just to, respect you and your experience. And still, obviously you recognize that there's the the training the conditioning that our brains have gone through, like linguistically with our language, to use the, pronouns that we use. And it can be a learning experience. And I think that that's, I mean, for me at home, to be able to challenge myself every time I'm going to use the word her and say, wait, no, they, it's really helpful. And it's helped me to, see other people and their full experiences as well, and to offer more, radical empathy, to relate it back to the topic of the show. So, okay, I'm gonna stop talking, and I want to toss it back to you about like what it's meant to you to kind of shift your pronouns with people that you're close with, and what the kind of experience has been, and what kind of things you've taken from that.
Mm, yeah, I mean, like what you said about, preferences and like, if I identify with she, they, and that feels most comfortable to me when someone that I'm close with or even that I don't know, really regardless, uses her pronouns with me. I don't know if being offended is really a healthy reaction. I don't think that that's my natural reaction anyways. I think it's more of just kind of like a humble understanding that gender and the fact that people think that there's two of them or maybe just, not as many as I've learned about there being is kind of something to be understanding about and to leave space for. Otherwise, you can create toxic frustrating feelings for yourself, and I know personally, I know, I have friends that I identify as non-binary and other, all other sorts of genders, and they will they have less tolerance or no tolerance to it and will correct someone or, you know, and you know what? I don't see anything wrong with that either. I think if you are feeling strongly about that and it is offensive or it makes you feel deeply, there's respectful ways to express that to somebody.
Right.
But as far as with me and my experience, I mean, I kind of have an incremental approach to it, and I think that I'll grow into it naturally, and people will see that clearer and clearer every time they're with me, hopefully, you know,
Right.
because it's just it creates less, it's more ease and less frustration on my end, but I think it's cool when people uh are intuitively able to, sense how I feel and pick up on it and respect that for me. That's I always appreciate that. Like, of course
Hmm.
you do that. But yeah, that's kind of my thing.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think that I was thinking when you were talking about that, because I think it's a good, a good example of why we wanted to talk about this is because, you know, one of the best ways that you can show empathy to somebody is accepting them for who they are, for the way that they see themselves in that form, and not, allowing any preconceived notions or societal conditioning that has, trained you to think in a certain way. Try to just set that aside and to just kind of accept people and their experience as they are. That's an empathetic thing to do. But then thinking back to like kind of the ethos of the show is like, how do you take those feelings of being empathetic if they go against the grain in society, and setting aside that it's more and more acceptable in society than it has been in the past for the LGBTQ plus community, but setting that aside, that's how you can learn how to hold your conviction, to be strong and powerful with, be a radical empath, like be empathetic, but then state that to the world with conviction and let people know the way that you feel and the way that you want to be identified. And just, the communication is key for these types of things. And I think that that's important too with like navigating relationships when it comes to gender and differing genders other than just the binaries. I think you'd agree with that, right? Like it's important to communicate about these things with people.
definitely, I do see that as super important. It's key. It's crucial to the LGBTQ plus movement. I think to be vocal about it. It's key in the vegan movement too to be vocal about it because I see examples in my life of situations where I could speak up about an issue related to veganism. I could speak up about an issue related to my gender, and I think that the most important thing is if you're doing that, that you are feeling like you're in a safe space to do so, and I hope that people stand up for themselves if they're disrespected also, myself included. I mean, I don't that's the thing is doesn't really does it bother me maybe or annoy me if someone uses the word her? Yeah, like, I'd prefer if you didn't, but I'm not I'm not one to go out of my way to correct you unless you're close to me and I share with you why that is my preference. I think that's the key.
Right.
But then, it's all about respect. If you do feel respected, then yeah, I'd hope that you stand up for yourself in those situations
Yeah.
or for someone that you care about.
Right. Yeah. So that's why I just wanted to point that out, because that seems like why a good reason why we wanted to talk about this, other than like lists being able to kind of share their feelings about these topics. It was just to be able to like connect this back to the ethos of the show. And if you listen to our trailer for our podcast, that's kind of what we talk about is like, how do you hold your convictions firmly in this world, and with the, differing types of opinions that exist and the tensions that can arise, with your empathetic views, and how that might go against, influences that you deal with in your life. So, and that can mean a lot of different things. And that's probably a whole other podcast, but, I mean, at least for me too, like you mentioned the vegan community, and I'm glad that you said that, because like we like to also in this podcast relate things back to veganism. So I kind of have my own opinion that I want to share about the way that I view my male identification. Um, because definitely there's like this thing in society of like macho man, you know, have a whiskey, eat, go to the grill your meat, and watch some football and all that stuff that would be kind of associated of like macho masculine. I don't associate with any of that. I don't do that. We talk about veganism on this show, and that's, the ethical standard that I choose to live by. And
And
so,
Oh,
Oh,
sorry, not to
go ahead.
interrupt you, but the whiskey part, I mean, we don't really drink
Yeah,
either.
exactly. Don't
So,
drink, don't watch football. That's what I'm saying. I don't really relate with those types of things.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's just in gender more broadly. I mean, sometimes I consider myself a really sensitive kind of guy too, and like that's not, it's common. It's not like there aren't sensitive males, but in
Right.
terms of like the societal expectation stereotype of like super manly macho masculine man, he's not usually a very sensitive kind of guy. But so my argument in bringing it back to veganism is because I hate the thing that exists in culture that says like, oh, it's a real manly thing to eat meat, and if you don't eat meat, then you're a soy boy and you just eat tofu. And there's all these misconceptions, obviously, about like you can't get enough protein and you wouldn't be able to body build and like you can't grow muscle. All that stuff's just a bunch of BS. And there's a bunch of research. Go watch Game Changers. Obviously, I know that's true, but for me, it's like, what's more manly than standing up for defenseless creatures? Like if there was someone abusing a little kid and then someone ran in and stopped the person from abusing that and stood up and told everyone why that was wrong thoroughly, and that would be a really like masculine thing to do. That would be, and I don't, why is that not the same thing with animals? If you jump in and try to intervene and say this is wrong, like that to me feels more masculine than taking the life of a poor innocent
Well,
animal for a quick little meal that you want to grill up.
also, I mean, with saying something like that is manly or masculine, like, I feel like saying that rescuing some defenseless creature or something like that is heroic or is noble, or you could look at it as masculine or manly or macho. I think that's up to your perception, but I don't know. I think that any gender, any way you identify can have masculine and feminine qualities all the time, and they
Right.
fluctuate, and that's just kind of like part of the experience. And especially where you see like a lot of single parents, they have to be like balancing both the feminine masculine sides and
Yeah.
dynamics of like, okay, I have to like be powerful and be stern with you and be like what you would see maybe as the fatherly role maybe, but then mother like nurturing and feminine role of being like here for you and I'm supporting you. But I've seen both parents do flip of that,
Right. It's not,
they've reversed it.
nothing's bound by nature for it to be that way. And I
Yeah.
think that kind of goes to like a bigger point, which is like, aside from like the gender identification of non-binary, there's also the concept of the gender binary and
Mhm.
being like a non-binary thinker in a way, which I think we would both identify with for sure, of like
Nonconformist, yeah.
non-conforming. Yeah, I know. I'm not trying to say that we're non-binary identifying. I feel like that's a different thing, but thinking in terms of like gender as a binary, it's not that the woman has to be in the kitchen and the man's out in the wood shop, whatever the
Wow.
stereotypes are. There, everybody can do a little bit of everything, a little bit of everything under the sun. That's how the best strategy,
Yeah,
create the best balance.
I
But
agree.
yeah, I mean, I just wanted to share my own personal perspective on like my male perspective there, like relating it back to veganism, but also, yeah, I just have always, I wouldn't call myself like gender fluid because I do use he, him pronouns, and I feel comfortable with that. So, but I feel my role, like I said before, is just to be curious and to listen and to be a radical empath and try to stand up for people if they feel like that they need to be a little bit more emboldened. Then that's where I can lend a hand. That's what the goal of this podcast is, to try
Yeah,
to
that's
embolden people's radical empath selves.
that's a
Right?
beautiful way to be, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. So, I mean, and oh, the other thing I wanted to mention too, when we were talking about the binaries, it's not just another thing. I mean, this is like a whole other topic, just kind of, I guess, foreshadowing to the rest of what we might talk about
Yeah.
in future episodes. But it's not just gender where there's false binaries that exist in culture. They are all over the place. They're everywhere. And we could go through a list of so many different things that you're told that you only have two choices for, but there's other options for you to take. There's always nuance. There's always gray area. It's not just black and white. You don't just have to drink Coke or Pepsi. There's always water or something else, kombucha. How about that?
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, I like where that's going too, and I think we might even do a quick bit on the the fashion that's involved with our typical like gender and how we grew up and how, being comfortable is so important to both of us when we're getting dressed or picking out clothes or shopping for new clothes sometimes even. It's like, well, you got to be comfortable and that's the main thing and we want to talk about why that is. So,
Yeah, radical comfort.
radical comfort.
Yeah, we'll have some stuff coming up, and you might notice this is a somewhat shorter episode. We're slimming them down a little bit. Maybe the episodes were a little long. We're experimenting, but we want to hear, we want your feedback and everything. So we have an email. You can email us at radicalempathspod@gmail.com. You can follow us at all the places, and we've got YouTube where we put up extra video content and stuff like that. I'm giving an outro, but I should have said, like, do you have other ideas and like things about this topic of gender that you wanted to explore and talk about a little bit today?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just one more thing is that we would love to collaborate and we're looking forward to having some guest speakers on, some good friends of ours and also people that we look up to and things like that that have done really great work and that we see as radical empaths too. So we're excited and we're looking forward to that. And those will probably be our full length episodes, more in depth, deep dive conversations. So we're looking forward to that as well. And I think that was just the last thing I wanted to add before we say goodbye.
Sweet. Yeah, this was a good chat, and I hope that we, if you haven't thought about these topics before, I hope that we opened your ears a little bit and you think a little bit more on it. If you've thought all about it, we hope that that you agree with us and that you like what we had to say. And we hope that you tune back in. So let's get out of here. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Peace out.